one of his biggest hits from the 80s. So this is Absolute Beginners by David Bowie.
I've nothing much to offer. There's nothing much to take. Such
naturally, the Beatles. Album Help. Act
And
naturally,
actually
the
a cover
Beatles.
by
Help.
Earlier,
Naturally,
Act
the
Naturally
Beatles.
by
Help.
the oldest song.
Naturally,
Act Naturally by
Help.
the word act.
Naturally,
Naturally by
Help.
the word act.
Naturally,
Naturally by
Help.
the word act.
Naturally,
Naturally by 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 word act.
naturally,
Naturally by word act.
naturally,
Naturally by word act. 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 Naturally by
Did you see it too? It was incredible. They played it on a loop. We couldn't believe it. Basically, they discovered that there were others just like us, other beings, other creatures, other planets and other species who had other gods that they believed in, and they interviewed all of them, and every one of them, not one gods that they believed in, and they interviewed all of them, and every one of them, not one gods that they believed in, and they interviewed all of them, and every one of them, not one god that they believed in, and they interviewed all of them. It brings me peace of mind to know that this will all just carry on with someone else. It brings me peace of mind to know that this will all just carry on with someone else. It brings me peace of mind to know that this will all just carry on with someone else.
even the parents don't see how it's affect the kids until they grow old. And
Because they start acting upon what they saw when they were kids.
yeah, because even think about it. We wanted to talk about this topic because it's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening in every kid's life.
In every generation,
Because even you, think about it. If you see now a Disney movie, just see it and look for the stuff, and then you really see the messages. It's all over every movie that when you're a little kid.
yes, because when we were little and we were watching these movies, we didn't notice. We, like, subconsciously maybe it got to us, but we didn't notice when we were kids what was actually happening. And if we watch those movies now, we can look deeper into it and understand things that we didn't understand back then and see how it resonates in our lives.
And even when you think about it, it's really and think and do even the parents and don't see your life how it affects. The kind of a problem for people don't notice this stuff, because even the producers, kids, until they grow old, know what they're doing.
Because
And
they
do.
start acting I actually upon. think they do know what they're doing.
Really?
I do. Yeah. I think it provides. I don't think they know about the effects that it can have on people in the future, but I think putting those hidden messages in is definitely not by accident, and I think they do know that they
know what they're doing. They know what's happening.
yes.
And they know what they're putting kids into. Because if you think about it, the cool stuff is the stuff that makes us interesting in the movie, and violence and everything else
Yes.
makes it interesting. But
And some of it can also be for educational purposes, I'm sure.
yeah, of course. But if you think about it, the educational movies are usually pretty boring, aren't they? Because the movies you see in a classroom isn't that interesting as the prince who fights over a girl and kills monsters and other people to win the girl.
Well, yes, but there are also other topics that we're going to talk about that we see the good things and the bad things. So maybe we should start.
Okay, so let's start with the first thing we saw. I think that you can see on yourself and on other people that we always expect life to be a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
We always expect for the perfect guy, for the perfect house, for the perfect everything. Because if it's even a little bit unhappy, then we're not good in what we're doing.
Mhm.
And if it's a little bit complicated, we are what's wrong and not the world.
Yes. And I think that expectation definitely comes from a lot of Disney movies, but specifically something that we call Cinderella syndrome.
Yeah, of course. Cinderella syndrome is basically, if you don't know, it means that we always gonna look for the perfect guy, because in Cinderella, for example, we saw that she finds the perfect prince. She's always the girl, the poor girl who's a little bit unhappy with not a good family and stuff. And she meet a guy and he saves her, and they're gonna live a perfect life, and it always gonna be a happy ending. It's always gonna be the perfect guy. And Cinderella syndrome means that we're always gonna look for the perfect guy, and unconsciously we're gonna reject guys or girls or person because it's a little bit not perfect.
Yes.
I think the problem is, Sinead, is there anybody that's perfect?
No, I don't think there is.
Because think about it in yourself. You're not perfect. And that's a good thing, because everybody has their flaws.
And if everyone were perfect, nobody would be perfect, because like there's always something. There's always problems.
And when you see that that's what happening, it's a problem because the world isn't perfect. And you can't really do that on yourself. You can't find the perfect guy, and that's not life, because life is beautiful without being perfect.
Yes.
And I think always the kids get like the big world when they're getting older, because in their mind the world is perfect. There isn't bad in the world.
Yeah. There's also, I want to add, an expectation in all these princess movies to, you know, in the end up marrying someone or end up being together, where in real life it's not always like that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't always find your person, and you don't, like, it's not always like that.
And you know where we see that? We see that in Snow White, actually. In Snow White, the villain is single. And if you realize it, in almost every movie, the villain is single. And what does that affect on your mind when always the bad guy is single? He doesn't have anyone. I think that if I saw that in 6-year-olds or when I was 10 even, I thought being single is bad. I thought there was something wrong with me if I don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or anything else, because in Disney or in TV shows for kids, there isn't a villain that has someone with him.
Yeah, and I also think that the way they see it in Disney is like, okay, maybe being single wouldn't be such a bad thing, but once you get to the point where you're single, so then you become a villain because you're all lonely and sad.
That's an interesting point. I never thought about it.
Yeah,
Wow.
and in reality, some people get very lonely and very sad, and maybe that makes them do some bad things. But most people are good people in the world, and even if they're lonely,
It's okay.
it's okay, and they won't do anything bad.
Sometimes even being alone is better than being in an unhappily relationship or marriage or anything else, because sometimes being alone is actually good for you. It makes you think about yourself more and put yourself first in your eyes, and it's actually a good thing. And I think that all the movies doesn't appear like that.
Yeah. On another topic, happy endings are a very big thing in fairy tales, as we know.
I don't think there is any fairy tale that there isn't a happy
Yeah.
ending.
And maybe that's a good thing, you know, when you're little and you're like talking about, and you're reading stories and stories are being read to you. A childhood is a very like precious and wholesome time in your life, and maybe it's nice to hear stories of optimism.
Yeah, I actually, when I write it down, the happy endings, I thought it was a bad thing because I write it down and because it's everything we see in every movie. And I think there should be a movies that doesn't have happy
Yes,
endings.
for
To see,
sure.
there is an option of that. But I actually think that happy endings is like a really good hope to give people, because in the end it's going to be